Hey guys, today we're going to talk about the role of remoteness in the context of negligence law. Remoteness is a separate concept from causation. The role of remoteness is to filter out situations where even if the duty of care, the breach and causation can be established, the nature of the damage sustained by the plaintiff makes it unfair to make the defendant liable because the damage is too remote already to have been foreseen. The exact circumstances of the accident need not be foreseeable, but the type of damage caused must have been foreseeable by the defendant. The Singapore Court in Appeal in Sachi and Sachi and Tan Hoon Ling held that where the type of damage was foreseeable, the damage would be treated as not too remote and the defendant will be liable for negligence even if the full extent of the damage could not have been foreseen. Let me give you an example. If I hang a flower pot on the ceiling here and a client sits over here and the flower pot drops on the client's head and causes the skull to fracture. Now, this would definitely be a case where the damage would be foreseeable because the flower pot is hanging directly above the client's head if there's a chair here and the client sits here. But if the flower pot drops on the table and then bounces out of the window, if the window is open, and then rolls out the awning onto the road, and then a car hits the flower pot and then swerves and knocks a pedestrian. Now, that kind of damage would be too remote because the sequence, the series of events are so unforeseeable that hanging a flower pot here would result in it falling out of the window, bouncing on the table, and then falling out of the window, getting in the way of the car, causing the car to swerve and hit a pedestrian. It's too remote and not foreseeable. In the English case of Vacwell Engineering and BDH Chemicals, the Queen's Bench held that the defendant was liable for all the damage caused from a large explosion caused by the reaction in glass ampoules with water. There was a chemical reaction in the glass ampoules between the chemicals and the water. He was liable for a large explosion, even though only a small explosion was reasonably foreseeable. So if you foresee that mixing the chemical with water will cause a small explosion, even if a large explosion was caused, the fact that it was larger than expected does not negate the defendant's liability for the damage caused. The only exception to the rule that damage caused to the plaintiff must be reasonably foreseeable before the defendant would be liable for that damage would be the eggshell rule, which is also known as the eggshell skull rule or the thin skull rule. Under this rule, the defendant cannot avoid liability for damage just because the plaintiff is more likely to suffer injury compared to normal persons due to a physical disability or condition. Therefore, even if the defendant did not intend to cause such a severe injury as that suffered by the plaintiff as a result of the defendant's actions, he can still be held liable. For example, if the defendant accidentally punched the plaintiff in the head, while other people may have just suffered a large bruise on the head, the plaintiff had a skull that was as thin as an eggshell and suffered fatal brain injury as a result of that punch. So even though it's arguable that the defendant could not have foreseen that a punch to the head would result in the death of the plaintiff, the defendant would still be liable for the plaintiff's death because of the eggshell skull rule. In the English case of Smith and Leach Brain Company Limited, which was a decision of the Queen's Bench, the plaintiff had a pre-existing pre-cancer condition on the lip. And because of the negligence of the defendant burned the plaintiff's lip and caused the lip to become cancerous, leading to the death of the plaintiff. The English court held that the defendant was liable for the entire damage, the death, and not merely for the burnt lip. So in other words, the defendants have to take their victims as they come. If the victim or the plaintiff have a pre-existing condition, and the injury to that causes the condition to worsen and lead to unforeseen consequences, then the defendant will still be liable because of the eggshell skull rule. So thanks for watching this video on remoteness of damage.